In this episode of the podcast, we talked to Estephany Cortés, a food science master's student at the University of Minnesota with previous learning in the field of biotechnology engineering. The conversation that Stephany and I had revolves around food science, food regulation, nutrition, regulatory agencies, dieting, and especially plant-based dieting, and how that compares to a diet that includes both the consumption of meat and also the foods that will be found in a plant-based diet. We also talk about supplementation and how the industry of plant-based proteins is growing and what we think about this topic, amongst other things that relate back to the core of the conversation, which was food science and nutrition. If you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, please like, comment, and share. And if you enjoy the show, please share, subscribe, and leave a rating. That being said, thank you for being here and welcome to the up and coming show. Thank you for making time and thank you for being here. I appreciate your time and you wanting to come on. If you want
Thank you so much for
just
inviting me.
yeah, of course. If you just want to introduce yourself, who are you? What do you do?
Okay, so my name is Estephany Cortés. I am originally from Mexico. I'm 30 years old. Basically, I've been here in the US about a year now. I just started my food science master's here at the University of Minnesota. It's been challenging, but there's a lot of things that I've learned in this last year. And yeah, right now I'm focusing, like my whole career is being focused on, I guess, the food industry, the food safety part of basically food of so, and also I had some extra projects that also involve kind of like the nutrition background in terms of ready to eat soups back when I was on undergraduate. But yeah, I have I think I've done different things in different areas regarding either health or anything regarding with food.
Okay. What part of Mexico are you from?
I'm from Michoacan, so that's like in the center, 6 hours away from 6 hours away from Mexico City, I would say.
Okay. Did you do your undergraduate studies in Michoacan?
I did it in Guadalajara. I'm not sure if you know that place. Have you heard of it?
I'm from Mexico City.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Okay, so you speak Spanish then?
Yeah, I speak Spanish. I would speak to you in Spanish. It's just I do the podcast in English, so I just speak English with my guests. But later on, when we're done, we can talk in Spanish, no problem.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, I'm actually, like I said, I'm from Zamora, Michoacan, which is known really for their like strawberry, like a lot of berries harvest, their candy, and also like
Avocados
for sure. Yeah.
That's so once you started your undergraduate studies, you went to college in Guadalajara.
In Guadalajara, right. I was there doing my biotechnology engineer undergraduate degree, and yeah, after that I took a chance into a management trainee program. I was 6 months in the north of Mexico in a food plant, and then I got transferred here. I mean, a lot of things happened. I ended up going back to Mexico City because it wasn't exactly what I wanted in life. And then yeah, I decided to come back here last year to do my master's.
Okay. What did you study in undergraduate?
So it's biotechnology engineer, which is basically, I will put it this way. I normally tell everyone the same thing. you just manipulate either any type of cell to obtain any type of bioproduct that you want. In my case, what I was more drawn into, it was food. Let's say like, I don't know, like beer. You use yeast to produce beer. So in my undergraduate, they gave me a chance to take nutrition classes, and also by the last 4 semesters to give it more like it's called bioprocesses, so it's more focused like biotechnology but in food. So that was a really huge plus. And yeah, at the end I was like, I just for sure I wanted to do my master's, so I thankfully I got admitted, and then I came here last year. So hope I have 1 year left, so hopefully everything turns out the way that I'm
Okay.
expecting.
Right. And what is the master's program you're doing in Minnesota?
So it's a food science master's program. We do share the department with nutrition, with the nutrition program, but there's at the same time it's 2 separate programs, but we do collaborate every once in a while. And basically what is it about is a 2-year program, and during those 2 years, the first year you get to take all the classes that you needed to get to your thesis credits, and then at the same time you start working on your thesis. So that's what I did my first year. And right now what I'm gonna do is this second year I'm just gonna focus on my thesis and hopefully finish it by the next summer, and also doing some TA shifts to support my in order to get my tuition covered. But yeah, basically that's how it works. And it's a really small department. There's a department focused on plant protein. There's another department focused on dairy, and the department that I work on, it's food safety. It's regarding food safety. So yeah, it's not that big. So
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned that to me when we were talking through email. You said that you focused on food safety. I'm
right.
I'm not so sure, how is like the food science department different to the nutrition department, or how is it similar?
Well, the thing is that, so I would say from what I've seen and from my personal experience is that nutrition, it's more in terms of like the portions of carbohydrates of every different let's say section of food, like vegetables, I don't know, like they focus more in terms of like the specifics of food, like the chemical compounds, the health side also of foods, which is one of the main important things. And in terms of food science, we're more related into research and development, how to develop a product that will also that it's also viable to be produced. Mainly also focus into how it's gonna be sold. So it is they work together, but they complement each other. But they are 2 different things at the same time, for sure.
Is nutrition more so the effects that certain foods and food compounds have on the body directly, and then food science, I'm guessing, like you said, it involves like making a product and analyzing the product. There's it's not so limited to, I imagine, the consumption of food and the effects that has.
Right. So
Okay.
you explained it perfectly. So basically, nutrition, for example, all the master students there or PhD students their thesis are focused into what's the actual let's say omega-3. I'm just putting an example out there. What's the health benefit coming from it? But they are analyzing it from a really specific view. And also, obviously, basically they focus on the benefits that food has, the antioxidants part, polyphenols, all of that specific group of compounds. And us as food scientists, we mainly focus on, we know about nutrition, but it's not that specific. We are also more into food regulation, what FDA requires, what USD requires, food regulations, and also microbiology, which is not something that it's seen by a nutritionist, which is the part that I'm working on, food safety / food microbiology. So
how it affects like the body at a cellular level?
Right, that will be done by the nutritionist, and
Okay.
by let's say by our department, food microbiology or / food safety. We analyze, let's say, salmonella. We analyze potential compounds that might help us to minimize that in the food industry. Everything applied in the food industry.
Okay, got it. So is your thesis focused on food safety?
Right.
Okay.
My
What is the overarching topic or concept that you explore in your thesis?
So one of the things that it's really common here in the masters is that the majority of us, we don't get to pick the topic for our thesis. So
Okay.
you work with a mentor. If you're interested in that thesis that it's already set up, you join with them. So basically, when I came up here, the thesis that I'm working on, it's regarding bacteriophages, which is something that I never heard before when I came in, even though I studied biotechnology and all that. I guess it's something really specific, but it has a really interesting and powerful application in terms of how they can be used to minimize foodborne bacteria, and mainly Salmonella and E. coli.
Okay, so that's your focus of your thesis.
Right. The use of bacteriophages to minimize or reduce E. coli and Salmonella.
Would you say that that's an area within food science that you're the most interested in, or is it something that you were assigned to?
So I was assigned to it. Honestly, it's something different. It's something that I'm getting more attracted to within as time goes by. I'm not really sure if it's something that I see like way in my future later. I do see myself more. I know that I see myself in the food industry, like in the food plant, but I'm not 100% sure what the future holds for me. As you know, like us as international students, we do it's an uncertain path that we go through. So I'm hoping that either will be something related to, either could be food safety, or it could be research and development of food. Either one of those, I guess. So those will be my two picks.
Okay. Hey, I'm curious because in Mexico, when you studied in your undergraduate studies biotechnology, I don't think, like you told me, you don't focus on more specific things when you're there. That's something that you progress as you do a master's degree or a PhD degree. You go on to then narrow your focus instead of broadening it. How did you decide that you wanted to, I guess, explore this area instead of something else? Was it something that you maybe did when you were in Mexico, or do you have some goals that you want to achieve once you finish your degree, or kind of why did you go down this path?
So I'm gonna be 100% honest. I mean, when I was actually finishing high school, um, my both of my parents are medics, are doctors, sorry. So I always wanted to go into the nutrition part of the food industry, I guess. But the initial thought that my dad gave me when I told him that I wanted to do that, he said, there's too many nutritionists already. Like, since he worked at a hospital, he said he did mention we only need one as like in the whole hospital. So I don't see, I think he saw something that he considered that I could do something different. So after that, I found this food engineering major, that it was kind of like something new that was coming up. And I also found the biotechnology engineer. So since I was told that in the bioengineering, I could, like, later in the run, could focus more in food, I decided to go and choose that undergraduate instead of food engineering, because you never know, right? You can graduate. I think when you are in college, I think everything is perfect, and you are like, yes, I'm gonna get the job that I want in the place that I want, and in whatever position that I want, right? But I had this in the back of my mind that since I didn't know what was going to happen, I went through the biotechnology part, having in thought that maybe I wouldn't end up in the food industry. Maybe I would end up in, there's a lot of positions. There could be like working with in a lab, or working with bioremediation, which is working in the environment and things like that. There's a lot of different things that you could do as a biotechnologist. But I mean, after that, after I finished my undergraduate, I was a little bit like, I promised myself that I would do something regarding specifically like my master's in food science, because that's something that I just knew that I wanted it to do. I knew that a master's in nutrition wasn't the right fit for me, since I wanted to develop, like I needed that. I already had the background as an engineer, and I don't know, I think I saw myself more in the food science industry than in nutrition part of it. So at the end, I decided that, okay, so the lights went out.
It's no problem.
Sorry about that. So yeah, at the end, I decided that food science, it was something, like I said, that I knew that I wanted to do always. And I just went for it. I started digging in to see what colleges were out there that had the degree, and I picked this one because I fortunately I have my mom's family here, so I was like, I think I just wanted to go for it. And yeah, I mean, after that, obviously it gives you a huge plus in your resume. And well, yeah, that's the reason why I wanted to do it. But I do believe that research is something that is really, since it's part of doing a master's, it's really challenging. So I would say that obviously the master's is completely different than an undergraduate degree.
Yeah. Right now that you mentioned the resume thing is very true, because I was, when I talk with some of my family members, it's always, or it can be a problem to, if you do your studies in Mexico and then you try to find a job somewhere else in the world, whether it be Canada, USA, or you go to some part in Europe or somewhere else in the world, it's unfortunate that a lot of the countries around the world don't take into account those types or the studies in that are performed in Mexico the same way that they do if they were, done in the US or in Canada or somewhere else. There's I guess this association people make between less, I guess, they value them less to what they
Yeah.
would value other study or a degree from elsewhere in the world, and that is unfortunate. I think that's as I there are good institutions in Mexico, as I'm sure you're aware, that very smart people graduate from, and it's not fair that they don't necessarily get the same opportunities to be in jobs around the world, competitive jobs, just because of where they had or where they completed their degrees. So I wanted to mention that because I can I've talked about that with my family, and it's something that it's unfortunate, but it's definitely the case.
No, and I completely agree. Believe me, like every time that I get this for some reason discouraged here, or I'm having a bad day or things like that, what brings me back and with motivation, I'm like, hey Stephanie, this opportunity is not given to everyone. Your parents worked really hard for you to be here, and this opportunity might not come up later in life. And also since I yeah, I think that helps me a lot to just come back stronger and just say, you know what, um like you mentioned, unfortunately this is not given to everyone. And it's more unfortunate because I I don't consider myself um intelligent. I do consider myself that I do the work, and I know so many people in Mexico that they are so intelligent, but they don't have the means to come here and find something like this. So it is really unfortunate because we do have a lot of talent back there that could definitely do a lot of great things here.
Yeah, I'm in the same place with you. So I'll be finishing my undergraduate in December. I'll be graduating, and I'll be probably starting to work.
Mhm.
I was thinking about doing some sort of graduate degree. The problem is I'm not really sure what I want to do yet, and I don't think it's the best idea to commit to a certain path or a certain degree, a master's degree or a PhD, if I don't know what I really want to do, because it's a big time investment and money, of course, as well. And
Right.
so I'm probably going to start working, and in this process of starting to work, I have to look into applying for the appropriate visa for me to work. And then of course I have certain restrictions that maybe if I was a US citizen, which I'm not, um I'm on an F1 visa. You're probably the same, right?
Yep.
So I have certain restrictions that an American citizen wouldn't necessarily have, and sometimes that can be frustrating. Like I'd be like, man, like after a certain amount of years. Fortunately, I'm in a major where it's a STEM major, so I
Hmm.
can
Nice.
work for a longer period of time before I need some sort of sponsorship. But later on, you do need that sponsorship if you want to continue working in the US, right? So
Nice.
sometimes I get frustrated because I think to myself like, oh, I would like to be able to do this or do that, and I'm just not. I can't do that because or like in as I'm studying right now. I don't know if you've looked into it, but in an F1 visa, I've tried to look for internships outside of my school to work in,
Yep.
and I'm pretty sure that in order for you to be able to work in an internship that's not inside of your school, you need to the school needs to give it some sort of credit, right? As like
Right.
part of your what do you like as part of your studies technically, right? So
Yep.
I can't really find an internship outside of school if it's not technically approved by the school, and it's a whole
Yep.
process. So I guess when I go out into actually looking for a job, maybe my resume isn't as complete because I don't have as much work experience, because I don't have the ability necessarily to get that work experience. It's very complicated. But then again, I look back like what you said, right? And I'm like, okay, I have the opportunity to be here, right? I might be somewhat limited in some ways, but if you look at the big picture, that's almost irrelevant because I am fortunate to have this opportunity and I need to make the most of it. And like you said, sometimes it's important to remember that.
Right. And now that you mention it, like I do believe that you're taking the right decision in terms of not going directly into your graduate studies. And I always tell this to everyone because I've seen here that everyone here who was born here, like they have this urge that, oh yeah, I do my undergraduate and then I go directly into my master's. And maybe this is also, it could be a pattern also in Mexico, let's say. But since I had the chance to work after doing my undergraduate, I 100% recommend that option because I do think that you need to, back in your undergraduate, they don't teach you about how life really is out there once you graduate, how tough it's gonna be, how like all the soft skills, they teach you the hard skills that you need to have in order to perform, but they don't teach you the soft skills. And that's something that you mainly learn once you're out there working, socializing, and working with actual people. But in regarding what you mentioned, that it's just for us as international students is really limited. I completely 100% agree with you. And I think that unfortunately, it's a little bit more stressful for us because we need to, even though we're already giving our best, I think we need to strive a little bit more to show that we deserve to be here. But I do believe that for sure, in your case, you will get there. Like you will find something that is really good for you, and just it's about going back and saying, you know what, I was given the opportunity. I know that maybe there's people that is born here that was able to do internships and all these things in their resume. At the end, honestly, I do think that good companies, they mainly focus also on the energy of the person, on like the attitude of the person. Not everything is the resume. Not everything is having all this background. No, that I do think that mostly like new companies do focus on how the person behaves and how the personality and all that. So I don't think you need to be worried about that.
Well, I mean, I think it's definitely hard to compete for jobs, especially if it's at a place where, or at a company that's very sought after and very competitive itself, right? It's hard to try to get a job there if you don't necessarily, if your resume or you don't have enough of a background to then compete with the other people that are applying. But I mean, of course, they take a lot of different things into account, and of course, I'm fluent in Spanish. That's something that some people might not necessarily have, right? And so that's beneficial. And then there's a whole, I guess, review of from a company perspective of who they hire. There's a very thorough process, I'm sure. And so
Right.
it's not just your resume. I agree with you there. Something that I wanted to ask you, and that you mentioned right now, is that you worked after your undergraduate degree. I think you mentioned that you worked in Mexico. What did you do?
So I just wanted to mention before I start this, you hit the jackpot by saying that you know Spanish. You believe me, the companies are begging for people that know that. So that's your secret weapon. I'm just gonna say that. Just coming back to the other question. So once I graduated, I applied to there's this company. They let you you basically rotated 6 months in a plant in the north of Mexico, and then you were brought here in a plant that you also chose. And after the year of the trainee program, you were able to stay here and get a official job, a stable job. So I was in 6 months actually in Durango, in the north of Mexico. It was a chicken plant, which, like I said, I think as an undergraduate, you have all these things like, yes, I'm gonna work for Nestle or Unilever, but at the end you end up with options that for some reason you're like, I think it wasn't what you were expecting, but at the end it teaches you a lot from life and of you and of everything. So I was there for 6 months in a chicken plant, and they rotate you through different departments: maintenance, food safety, food quality, refrigeration, human resources, which was a lot of learning for me, and I'm really grateful for. And after that, I was brought here into a Green Bay plant, which was a beef plant, and it's the same. Basically, they rotate you to all these departments, and you have a project that is assigned to you. And my project was assigned directly from the quality department. It was really interesting, and again, I learned tons of different things. I actually discovered that I got along really well with the maintenance department, better than the people from my own department, which was really funny. And yeah, and after that, I finished the year of the program, and I got a position in Souderton, Pennsylvania. It's with the same company. It was a food safety position, but unfortunately, it was a third shift position. So I tried to manage that position for 8 months, about 8 months, because basically since it's a food, in any type of food plant, they tend to normally have three different shifts, like morning, afternoon, and then night. So the only one available there, it was at night. So I mean, at the end, it was that, or I might be potentially getting back to Mexico. So I was like, let me take that position, because it was food safety. So I took the position, but I tried to make it work for 8 months, but it was really hard on my body. It was basically starting at 12 a.m. in the morning, and I ended up leaving the plant by 11. 11 in the morning. Yes, afternoonish. So it was almost 12 hours of work.
And at night, which is hard.
Right. It was honestly, it was one of the hardest experiences that I ever had. But again, it taught me a lot for myself. It taught me how long, a lot of things, because initially I was like, this is not for me. And it taught me a lot about resilience. So, at the end, I think just the meat industry in general, it wasn't for me. I learned a lot of things, things that I really appreciate, because now I'm like, for example, the whole Salmonella, E. coli recalls. This is something that I'm actually analyzing in my thesis. So it helped me a lot. And I'm really grateful for it. But at the end, I decided that the meat industry specifically wasn't for me. So it was a really hard decision, because obviously you are here. As you know, it's like everyone in Mexico see this country as just the best place to work on. And yes, I was really being paid really well, but at the end, I wasn't happy with what I was doing. So I decided to just go back and just have a restart for me. So I decided I came back to Mexico and I got a new job in Mexico City. But then the pandemic hit, so everything kind of changed for me by that time. And I was the newest addition to the company, and it was a family-owned company. So yeah, and by that time I was like, okay, if because obviously since I was the newest addition to that company, I got cut off from the company. They just stayed with operations because that was the only thing that they could cover by that time, when the pandemic hit. And after that, I was like, you know what? I think it's time to do my master's. So I applied to all this masters that I thought they had interesting programs in different countries. And at the end, I decided to come to this one once I was accepted.
Okay. What was the last company you worked in Mexico before you did your master's? Or
So
what did it do?
So it was they do importations if when we were in Mexico of it's natural ingredients, powdered ingredients for the food industry, like let's say curcumin, protein powders. Like they had this huge catalog of anything that you can think of. They had it in powder. Collagen, a lot of things that are used in the beauty industry, in the food industry, in the pharmaceutical industry, also in the animal industry. So we sold all of those, and I was the R&D manager for that company. So I was basically there by teaching first of all, like teaching all the sales technicians to know the properties of the product, the chemical backgrounds, the health benefits, and also at the same time, every time that we used to make any type of sales, I used to interact with the company to help them to develop the product that they were trying to make with that particular product that they bought from us. So that was mainly my the position and the test that I had there.
Okay. So you mentioned that you wanted to move away from the meat industry because you didn't enjoy that. And with that last job before your master's degree, which was kind of with these natural ingredients and researching them and so on, is that something more like you wanted to do? Or do you have an idea of what kind of industry, perhaps instead of the meat industry, you would be more interested in?
For sure, the meat industry is discarded. That's I'm not coming back to the meat industry. No, I'm not coming back to that industry. Like I said, it taught me a lot. I'm really grateful for all the learnings that I had when I was there. But yeah, not my thing. But right now, I think what I'm really looking in forward, and once I'm able to graduate and do this OPT, right, which is the optical practical training, something like that, when we are able to actually work.
Right.
I'm looking forward for a company that it's really that the product that they're selling that has a lot of health benefits. And the first company that comes into my mind, I'm not sure if you heard of Giovanni, the yogurt.
Yeah, actually, it's funny because so I tend to have trouble with my digestive system for some reason. I think I have a self-diagnosed IBS, just because I have a bunch of issues with my digestive system, and I've tried a bunch of different things. But recently I was like, well, I'm gonna have to start just incorporating some form of probiotics, and so I was gonna either incorporate some like what are they called? some fermented foods,
Mm-hmm.
or yogurt, but I don't like yogurts. But it's what's most easily accessible. Like you can get kimchi or kombucha or things like that, but they're a little harder to obtain than yogurt. You can just buy yogurt
Right.
everywhere. And so I researched a little bit about which yogurts have uh, good probiotic strains and cultures. And I think Giovanni has, I think I've read that it has six different types of, or at least the Greek yogurt, it has six different types of probiotic cultures, like life cultures. So I
Yes.
about a week ago, I started like eating it every morning with
Yes.
my oatmeal. Even though I don't like the yogurt, I mix it with I make overnight oats every night, and so
Right.
I mixed it with that. It doesn't taste bad, and it's been helping. That along with I've been trying to sleep a little longer because I'm not sure if you knew, but in the stomach you have neurons which are
Yes.
right, and so there's this whole link between the brain and the like the
The
nervous
gut.
system and the gut, right? And so it's funny, but I've been trying to sleep more and at least 7 hours a night, and ever since I've done that and mixed in with the yogurt, I haven't had a bad like um IBS
Digestion.
day,
Right. Right.
digestion day. I felt quite a bit better. So it's just a funny story when you mentioned that company.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, I when I was an undergraduate, I actually had the opportunity to work in a small company in Guadalajara. Um, they have this gel, and it's like a jello, but it's in a aluminum bag, like a pouch. And since when I did my internship in that company, I started knowing about the benefits of probiotics. And I started to get in also familiarizing how probiotics how have this impact in your gut, in your like the whole influence that the probiotics can do for you, and also like how they can impact your mood, your your mental health, obviously your physical health. And that's something really interesting. That's something that I think it's also a trend in the food industry, since all this mental health movement is coming forward, and it's something that it's getting no more and attributing more. So I will for sure advise you to keep eating those type of different foods, because I mean there's a lot of fermented foods, but I do think that some fermented foods are not meant for everyone. For example, like I said, I love probiotics. I take probiotics myself, but the pills I take, there's a certain brand that I like that it's called Renew Day, and there's a specific strain of probiotics that I like, which is Lactobacillus rhamnosus. And I know I identified with the time that that's kind of the strain that it helps me with my digestion. So anyways, I take this probiotic pills, but there's a lot of fermented foods like kombucha, just like you mentioned, kimchi. But for example, in my case, kombucha, it's something that I don't like that much since it has a lot of gas. And I guess there's something for everyone. Everyone has different tastes in every different segment of their life. But yeah, I do think that there's a lot of potential out there for anything regarding fermented foods and probiotics.
So you would like to work in a company like Chobani then?
Yes, Giovanni. And also there's a lot of this there's an interesting fact about that company, because um since all all the previous jobs that I had, I also think it's really important for you to dig in terms of the company that you're gonna work for, their values, uh, their um, their work interactions, because that's something really important. That's something that being in the first industry that I was, I noticed that it was just really male dominant. It was a really harsh industry. The meat industry is a really harsh industry. So after that experience, I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna really dig in terms of what company I want to work for. I obviously I wanted it to be a company that produced a healthy products, but I also wanted a company that has its values, that um the leader of the company that has really just good leadership skills. All of those things are kind of really important for me. And when I started digging into Giovanni, it was this guy that would actually that it's from India. He was born in India, and he started doing his own Greek yogurt, and he was doing it so well that he moved in here to the United States, and he started his own company. And it seems like it's a really, even though it's everywhere, I dig in and they only have, I think, like a few plants. And I think it's not in the Midwest. It's a specific state. I don't remember what state it is, but it's just a couple of yogurt plants. They don't have tons of yogurt plants. So it seems like they have everything concerned, like concentrated into one place. So that tells me that the company manages in a totally different way. So yeah, that's just a fun fact that I discovered about that company. And I also know that their founder, it's just he has really leadership skills, a lot of leadership skills, because I follow him on LinkedIn. So that's a company that I will for sure would love, and I will for sure try my best to be a part of.
Yeah, I think, yeah, like you said, finding a company that aligns with your values and doesn't do something that's necessarily against what you support is important. You, like, with the thing you mentioned about the meat industry and how it's very, you mentioned like male dominated, and it's very, I would think it's a lot more, I would imagine, um what's the word, like it's not, let me put it this way. I think a lot of times, like, especially if it's not um a focus of the company to be, for example, pasture raised or to take care of their animals, so it can be very harsh on the animals, and then also for the people, I think, working there, it can take a negative effect emotionally, I'm sure, and mentally. And I wanted to ask you, taking that into consideration, like when you were working in these meat plants, you mentioned they were plants, so I imagine they were not like these farms where the chickens get to roam free, right? They were, I'm sure, in these videos that you see where they're all put together in cages and squished tightly together. It was that like the experience or the environment that you were working in?
Yeah, so basically,
Okay.
we, in the case of chickens, we received the chickens in cages. They had a farm previously where they were being brought on, but we were not in the farm. We just received the animal alive. And in terms of when I was brought up here, it was they actually had the animals, like the stablo. I forgot the name in English. They
The
had
barn,
the
I think.
barn. They had the barn right there next to it. So it was a completely different thing. And
In
you know
Mexico,
what?
they didn't have the chickens there, you said?
No, so they brought them uh like in trailers with their cages, and they just went directly into the line. Obviously with there was people in the line, but the farms weren't there. They were
Like
like,
the line, you mean where they kill them?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's why I just wanted to make sure I was understood what you were saying. Is what was it, something I was curious about is, was it different in terms of uh the the way that the process of, I guess, getting the chickens, and then I guess after once they do what they do, transporting them out or whatever, just the whole scene that you're in, was it very different in Mexico to what it was in the United States? Like, for example, were the health regulations different at all, or was it the same? Like, did you see differences?
I did I did notice differences, but it's a hard question to answer, because I did see that in Mexico there's certain things that are overlooked that are not really yeah, I would say that the word will be overlooked. And I do think that here the regulations are way tougher. But at the
Okay.
same time, like being here doing the master's, I remember when I was in Mexico and I was taking classes as an undergraduate, they mentioned, like, for example, the FDA being such a good thing, then USDA also being such a having such like so strict rules. But I've learned here that apparently not that much. Apparently that the whole European Union is the one that actually has everything together, that they have way more restrictions and everything. And here, not that much. So it's interesting. Obviously, in comparison to Mexico, I would say that Mexico is lacking a lot of
Okay.
different food restrictions and food law restriction for sure.
I interrupted you before, but you were talking about the barn once you were in here. What can you talk about that, or your experience once you were here?
Well, honestly, the barn was actually it was gonna sound kind of funny, but it was one of my favorite spots to be at, because I was able to, since I had this stewardship position, I was able to have a moment for myself to just be outside of the plant and not be locked down in a huge plant, right? And I was able to just watch it, because they have different type of cows. They have milk cows. There's a lot of different cows. I mean, they don't only manage milk cows. They had this really little cute, I forgot the name about them, but these are like short cows that they have a lot of fur. So the barn, for some reason, every time that I went into the barn, I was like, I don't know, like it was just a moment for me to just leave the plant, have this time for myself, and then just come back and do whatever that I needed to do inside the plant. I wasn't, like I said, my shift wasn't in the morning. I wasn't in the production line. When I was doing the trainee program, I did have to see that. I did have to see how the whole procedure is during the morning and afternoon. And it's something that is really hard to see. Honestly, it's something that really takes a toll on you if you're not,
Yeah, I'm sure.
yeah, if you're not really used to seeing that. But I guess you get used to it within time. And honestly, what I also saw that it's mainly in all meat companies here, because I know that it's a pattern, and in all meat companies here, there's a lot of foreign people. There people that are not born here. There's a lot of immigrants. So that's something that I was also it kind of, I guess I wasn't offended, but it's something that I guess it sucks that immigrants had to take those type of positions in order to survive here, in order to support their families. So
Yeah.
but yeah, I guess it is what it is. I mean, like I said, the pay was really well, but at the end, it's just kind of unfortunate that the immigrants have to take those positions, because there's no one that wants to take them, and or they can't find anything else that pays that well.
Right.
So
Yeah,
yeah, that's a,
that's unfortunate. It's yeah, and it a lot of times with the harder jobs, not just that, but jobs that are maybe more labor intensive or um just jobs that most people wouldn't necessarily find appealing. You'll find a lot of times, I think, in the US that they are performed by immigrants. So what you're saying, it makes sense. I was curious, when you worked at night, I know that you said that you weren't exposed to the production line and so on. I'm curious as to whether when you were in the plant there was some sort of like whether it smelled a certain way or whether it was just kind of, even though nothing was necessarily happening at night, there was still like this sense of just not feeling right or a little bit weird.
right. So actually, I mean, being at night, I it is, again, it's a really funny um funny and a lesson for me in life, because when I was doing my undergraduate in Mexico, I remember we took a class and we were talking about exactly the meat industry. And I remember telling myself, I would never work for a meat company. Like, I would never in my life. I
Yeah.
swear that I would never do that. And I ended up doing that. So, and and also it was kind of hard for me because I'm not really, for some reason I detect smells really, like odors really easily, and that's something that I don't know why. But I guess within the time, since at that time I had to prove that I deserved to be in that place, and that I was just whatever was I needed to do, I just wanted to perform well. So at the end I had to compromise, and I had to say, okay, this is not the best smell at all.
Yeah.
This is not the best industry to work at all. But I was like, I know that this is just the start. This is not something that I'm gonna be here forever. And that's what also kept me going. And I had really good mentors as well. That's something that I'm also really appreciative of, that because um the general manager actually from that plant ended up being a really good friend of mine, and he actually pushed me um to keep going. So he was, yeah, I met really wonderful people there, really really nice people. So that's what kept me going. And the decision that I took at the end, it was mostly my decision, because I by the time I believe I was 27. So I was like, I just really want to work in what I just in the industry that I really want to work on. So at the end I was like, I needed to take that decision for myself. So that's why I resigned.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Uh, having worked there and being exposed to those things, did you ever consider becoming vegetarian or vegan or something? I would think that maybe it would go through your mind.
Yeah, I mean it did. It did.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I mean, at this point I have eaten, let's say, since I worked in the industry, I would say a couple of burgers, of beef burgers, but I will count them with one hand. Um, it, I honestly, before I also started working for that industry, I never was a fan of beef. I I do like chicken, but I never was a fan of beef. I for some reason I can't digest it well. So obviously with that experience, that was like a huge, like, yeah, that kind of brought to me a lot of memories. So I was like, yeah, I don't um um yeah, I don't consume it. um I would say like 3 times a year if I'm really hungry. But yeah, after that it's just hard um to kind of eat animal proteins.
Yeah, I think it's weird because like we as humans in our anatomy and the way we are meant to be and eat, we're supposed to eat animal protein, right? It's just how we are. I mean, we're omnivores. We eat both meats
Right.
and we eat plants, and that's, I think, the for most people, I think that's the ideal nutritional setup, right? The thing is, and if you know, going back hundreds of years ago, before these plants happened, and before there was like this intensive meat industry, and before everything became very industrial, right?
Mhm.
And people actually had to go out and hunt their food and eat their food and that way, and get their food that way. It's very different, because I think, you know, when you look back at those situations and people that used to hunt or get their own food, or even now, if you don't look at those types of industries like at the large scale, but look at individual farms, like I said, that are pasture raised cows or chickens, and they have space to roam, and they eat well. I
Yeah.
think I think, like I said, the human body, for the most part, and most times, is supposed to eat this balanced diet that includes animal protein. It's
Right.
just it's hard to sometimes to want to eat this protein knowing where it comes from. I'm a big proponent of, whenever I can, and if it's more expensive, and that's
Yep.
like that's not ideal, right? But whenever I can, again, try to support these farms that don't function this way. If I buy
Right.
eggs, I'll try to buy pasture raised eggs. If I buy chicken, I'll try to buy like free range chicken.
Mhm.
Whatever I can, or whatever I buy it that's available. If even if it's more expensive, if I have the opportunity to pay that, right, I very much prefer to do that, because you both support, like, you support that farm or that person that's doing it in a more civilized way,
Human. That
you know,
right.
humane, right? And also, like, not only from that standpoint, but from your own personal one,
Right.
you're 100% eating something that's healthier and better for you.
Right.
So I think I don't think the solution necessarily, a lot of times, of course, I'm sure there's people that probably can't digest animal protein well, and they have to resource to plant protein, right? But
Right.
and for the most part, I think the solution to the this industry is perhaps supporting the smaller, more humane practices, such as farming, and again, free range pasture raised meat. That's my opinion.
No, I 100% agree with you. And I think I think right now there's this huge moving coming up, and it's definitely going to continue, and it's going to increase this whole movement of plant protein. Um, and there was actually a study back in Mexico that I do remember really well, that by 20 it was 2050, by 2050, having animal protein as an only source of protein, it wouldn't be enough to support the population. It wouldn't be enough. So that's why new protein sources are coming in, and also from the humane perspective, because of how all these companies treat the animals, right? So it's something that it's growing. It's something that I'm actually a really fan of the whole plant protein movement. I tend to do it myself, because um, one of the things that I've noticed from all this plant protein burgers and all that is that unfortunately, they do have a lot of additives. They do have a lot of um, oil, a lot of different additives, chemical additives. So what I try to do from my perspective is I just cook the beans, or I just cook the like mostly beans, or actually I put some oats in mine. And I just bake them, and I just put them in the blender, and I just do these patties. I do them myself, because
Yeah.
I do see that's some of the products that are out there, they have just a lot of oil, and I'm just used to, I think I feel more comfortable in preparing things myself. And also, like, as you know, coming from Mexico, we are used to like preparing things from scratch, and not by, I don't know, I guess it's I'm not used to buying the things. I'm used to doing them myself. And also, the friends that I back in Mexico, they are all dietitians, so we all share all of the possible different recipes. So I learned how to do mine myself. So I mean,
Yeah.
but again, it's a movement that I 100% support, and that I'm really glad that it's changing. Fortunately, I mean, hopefully we will be here to see that big change, because I know right now it's changing, but hopefully by the time that we are old, we can just see that really reflected on everyone.
Yeah, I think with the burgers, for example, I think whenever a plant protein is trying to achieve a meat protein taste, there's probably a lot of things that are trying to that the person that's making the protein patty, for example, um, like you said, there's probably a lot of things that go into it to try to replicate that flavor. And
Right.
with um your patties that you make that you were telling me about, I'm sure, or I would think that they probably do not, you're not trying to replicate that flavor, but rather you're emphasizing the health instead of um adding all these different like additives and other things that you said. And I think that's something that's definitely better, right? If you want to eat more plant protein, maybe it's better to not try to replicate the other protein's flavor, but rather just make dishes with that flavor of beans or whatever it is that you're using, right? Whatever plant protein. I don't eat see, the problem is when I eat beans, again,
Yeah,
my
it's really hard
it's
on
a
the
little bit
stomach.
hard on my
Yeah.
stomach. So um
Yeah.
I end up pretty bloated, and it's complicates
Yeah.
my digestive system. But the what I do tend to like, I eat oats a lot. Oats have a good bit of protein in them, but I also eat like pea protein, like powder.
Yeah.
I don't whenever I do exercise or something like that, I used to just drink whey protein mostly, and maybe at nights
Oh.
casein, right? So from
Mm-hmm.
milk. But now most of the time, actually, I'd say more of the time, um, I combine like some portion of pea protein,
Mm-hmm.
just because I think from a digestive standpoint, it's
Right.
easier, I think, for me to digest than having all that whey or all that
Yes.
casein protein. And
Yes.
also, it honestly, like, I think it tastes better anyway.
Yeah.
It gives it a
Yeah.
better consistency. So I'm not sure. I mean, there's certainly some supplements, like people that want to uh, look into plant protein that they can get. Like there's pea protein, there's I think rice protein that you can buy. I've
Yes.
never tried it, but I've seen rice protein. Um, I'm not too sure which other types of proteins, but I'm sure there are plenty.
Right. Rice protein. So I forgot the name in English. Garbanzo. I forgot how it's said
I
in
think it's called garbanzo.
garbanzo. Okay, so
Yeah,
garbanzo protein, fava protein, pea protein, rice protein. I think I already said fava protein. I mean, basically you can get any type of protein from from different grains and from different um leguminosas, that I also forgot the name
yeah,
in English.
legumes. Yeah,
Legumes. So you basically you can obtain um protein from those sources. Actually, we have a like I said, a plant protein innovation center, and they are actually trying to. There's different sources. Even one of good friends of mine, she's working with, I just forgot the name of, there's a seed. It's not a common seed, but they're trying to dig in different seeds to obtain the protein from that actually has a really good amino acid profile.
And
Which
that, I
is
think that's the biggest thing, right? Because a
Mhm.
lot of times the problem with plant proteins is that they don't have the same amino acid profile than,
Right.
say, a 8-ounce steak or 8-ounce piece of chicken would have.
Right. And yeah, I mean, from the one that I know that has the best amino acid profile will be the pea, which is the one that, which is the one that it's consuming. I consume one myself. It's not for advertising, but there's this company that I also really love that it's called Song Warrior. And I look into their, like, the quality of their product. It's just really good. And it's also, I haven't had any stomach issues because I also agree with you in terms of the whey protein. It's kind of harsh on the stomach for some people because it's so concentrated. And in my case, it also got me bloated. So with this plant protein that I'm taking, it's not the case at all.
Yeah,
So
I take one that's the company's called Naked. They make a bunch
I
of
know
different
them. Yeah.
products. Yeah, I get their casein protein from there too, and then I've gotten I haven't gotten their whey. I've gotten the pea protein. What's cool about it, I don't know if you've read into it, but it's literally just pea
Yep.
protein. And so
Yep.
there's no conservatives, there's no sweeteners, there's no sort of like flavor enhancers or anything like that, flavorings. It's literally, if you look at the ingredients, it's 100% pea protein powder, and that's it. And
Right.
so that's I guess the core mission of the brand is to provide these supplements without anything else added on. And so whatever I do is whenever I make like a post workout shake or with my overnight oats, what I'll do is I'll add like some cocoa powder. Myself, I'll add like a little bit of peanut butter powder. I'll add the yogurt for my morning oats and some cinnamon and like a little bit of brown sugar. And so I'll make everything myself without all these like lab or chemical additives or conservatives added by them. I can kind of choose what I put in. That's what's cool about it.
Right. No, that's a really smart. It's a really smart thing that what you're doing, because also from a pocket point of view, you're saving yourself a lot of money, because the companies, that's what they do. Anytime, because there's something that I've seen, especially from the protein powder companies, that there's this new, I'm sure that you heard of it. There's this new sugar replacement, which is called fruto del monje, which I just forgot in English, which
monk
is
fruit.
Monk fruit, exactly. Monk fruit. That it started this really huge trend like 2 years ago. But the protein companies are slowly starting to add it to their, obviously, to their product, to give it like a plus. But at the end, when you look at how much they add, it adds so much to their cost that at the end it's like, never mind, I would just add it myself, or I would just like you said, put either brown sugar or a date or things like that to just give it a little bit of sweet to it. So that's something that also companies do, that tend to add up in the price, and obviously that comes into the consumer's pocket.
Yeah, you know what I realized, that when I was ordering my my protein a couple of weeks ago, before I got that plain one, I used to get one that already has cocoa powder in it. It's just cocoa powder and the pea protein. There's nothing else. But now I get just the one that's pea protein. And one thing I realized is that it's the same size container. But the one without cocoa, it's like the same price too. But the one without cocoa powder, or I think it's the same price. The one
Mhm.
without cocoa powder has like 20 servings more, just because
Mhm.
the cocoa isn't powder isn't occupying space, so they have to actually fill it
Exactly.
with a pea protein. And
Yep.
so I'm like
Yeah.
getting like almost a third or a fourth extra, like for the same price, just by not getting the cocoa powder added onto it into it. So I mean that
Right.
cost thing probably, like, yeah, that makes sense. And with the monk fruit extract that you mentioned, and those sweeteners, aside from adding additional cost, I think I tend to prefer to add, I mean, I guess it's, I don't know. I haven't read too much into uh research for like the monk fruit extract. I've read a little bit about like stevia. I've read about a little bit about like the more artificial ones, not the not the ones coming from natural sources. So like
Right.
aspartame, I think is called, and like
Right.
sucralose and things like that. But um I tend to prefer, like, all out of all these, I just tend to prefer, although it's more, although it might have calories, like I just prefer to have natural things directly. So not necessarily extracts or things that claim to be like zero or 0 calorie sweeteners, such as
Right.
stevia or like this monk fruit that has like very little calories. But I would just rather have like brown sugar, which I know it comes from straight like cane sugar,
Right.
and I'll have like maybe 1 scoop, and it's not, it maybe has some calories, but I'd rather have that, knowing that it's better. Or like honey, right? I'd rather have honey or
Yeah.
maple syrup or something like that. But
Right.
that's just me.
No, honestly, that's a really good thing to do that not a lot of people do. I think since sugar was so, like, when you hear the word sugar, it's just like sugar, it's so bad. Um, and since not everyone knows about all these chemicals that go into artificial sweeteners, um, I think it's just a smart thing to do to just go for the direct source of sugar instead of just looking towards like artificial sweeteners. Because one of the things is that also people don't see is that it backfires on you, because it's like, oh well, I already drank, I had my, let's say I had my, today I had my cappuccino with stevia. That means that I could have as, I don't know, at least a donut or something like that. It's just like it it it, it tricks your mind, telling you that, oh, since it doesn't have any calories, that you could eat other stuff, and it doesn't, obviously it backfires on your diet and whatever goal you have. So I think at the end, it's just the smartest thing to do is to just go directly to the source, even though, as you said, it has calories, but it will fulfill you. It will do that. It will give you, also, obviously, it will give you that good taste. And another thing about the artificial sweeteners is that they tend to have like this off flavor after you take them.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different downsides about the artificial sweeteners for sure. Um, so I guess, like I said, it's not meant for everyone, but I do think that what you're doing is just the best thing that anyone could do.
And with sugar, there's different types of sugar, right? Like you have the one that's processed, and like the refined white sugar, which isn't as healthy as if you take just like the plain turbinado brown sugar from that comes more naturally from the cane from the um like the actual cane, the sugar cane.
Right.
So,
Right.
or like again, I eat quite a bit of honey, and like
Mhm.
honey is like it's made naturally from
Yeah.
our friends the bees. So like
Yeah.
we I don't, and yes, it has calories, like I said, but if you eat it with moderation, or if you're careful about what you eat and exercise, and do what you're supposed to do regularly, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to eat these things. And like you said, it might even, and probably is better than like putting all these artificial sweeteners and chemicals into your body.
Right. And also one thing that I think it's also not that well regulated here. And I do believe that in Europe is regulated, the consumption of these products, but here it's not. It's not. Um, there's not a lot of studies saying that this might in the future cause or have a human hazard. So that's another downside from that industry. Since we're dealing with chemicals, I mean, it's basically a powder concentrated with chemical. So unfortunately, there's not a lot of science saying that they're safe. They're safe to consume 100%. So you're dodging the bullet there by not consuming those type of products. And I'm not saying I do, and to be honest, I do consume them once in a while. But I try, for example, my coffee, I do try to drink it straight, just because I rather avoid that aftertaste it has, and also because I just like my coffee like that. And
Right.
yeah, so
So you say that in Europe, the artificial sweeteners are more regulated than they are here?
yeah, that
Okay.
everything over there is way more regulated. For example, there's artificial colors that they use here that are banned in Europe. I think the color is red. There's one color here that is used for candies or something like that it's banned in Europe. There's a lot of things that are banned in Europe that are not banned here. And yeah, there's a lot of different things that when I actually started my master's here and I started going to the lectures, that I was like, I didn't know that, because back in Mexico it's like USDA and the FDA is such a big thing. It's such a they have such good regulations, but when you actually see it, it's like, I mean, obviously nothing's perfect, but they do have their downsides.
Why do you think they don't regulate those things as well as they do? Like, why don't they regulate them here as well as they do in Europe? Why do you think?
I do think there's a lot of bias towards a lot of different companies, which it shouldn't be the case, since their main goal is obviously to assure that whatever you're consuming, whatever food product you're consuming, it could be meat or it could be whatever ready to eat product. Their objective is to make sure that it's safe, right, in every possible way. But I do think that sometimes they're biased. Sometimes there's not a lot of even though let's say there's a new product that they're studying about, I don't think they don't dedicate the proper amount of time to release and say that those products are safe to eat. So maybe just, yeah, I think in Europe there's a lot of more careful and considerateness in that part. And also one thing that I was mentioned in this particular semester is that over there's just one entity that takes care of, it could be meat, it could be candies, whatever. And here they are divided. It's FDA, which manages, as you know, drugs, they manage food, they manage all these things. And there's also the USDA, which manages meat. So it's kind of hard when there's all these different segments trying to achieve one goal in comparison with just being one entity, trying to make sure that it's everything's safe. So apparently that's a huge, I would have thought initially that will be harder for one entity to manage everything, drugs, food, and all that, but apparently it's not. Apparently it's something that is really functioning in Europe, and that it's just really functioning for them, and they have just a lot of more upsides and a lot of more control in terms of the food products that they make.
Yeah, that's it shouldn't be the case, right? I think there should be
Yeah,
a standard, not just for here, but for Mexico, for every country in South America and Asia. Like I think there should be a world standard, kind of like what people need to eat and what's not healthy. I mean, not
right,
necessarily what people need to eat, but what's considered to be healthy and what's considered
right,
to maybe pose some sort of hazard for the people, and just having a different um plan of, I guess, having a different standards in different places isn't the ideal. It's not the best way, I think, to approach these things. Maybe there's some way in the future where it can become a more standardized thing for most countries around the world. Um, I think that you can, because there's one thing is you have like the nutritional component of it, and
hmm,
people choosing what's healthy and what's not healthy, and choosing things that are best for their bodies. And then another thing is kind of having safety standards, like to put certain products or certain things out there, because if you can have, let's say there's this standard just in everywhere where it's like everything that's put out is technically safe, you can still have
hmm,
people that will eat unhealthy, and that's
right,
another issue, right? But at least you can control, or the first part to control is that everything that is put out doesn't pose some sort of health hazard. Later on, later on you can then focus on education and teaching people what's healthy, what isn't healthy, and what they should eat, what they shouldn't eat, or what they should eat in moderation and stuff like that. But I think the first step is just being able to have products on the shelves, on the grocery
right.
stores and everything, or drugs that are genuinely safe, right? That they have no sort of hazard. So hopefully there's some sort of standard that can be implemented here in the US, and in all countries like around the world. That'd be ideal.
Right. And it's basically having that first and most important barrier covered, which is their main task, right? To make sure that that whatever you are consuming, could be drugs or it could be food, um, it's safe and that it won't cause any hazard in any type of way. But yeah, I mean, hopefully later in the run things can be more um normalized, because also I know that the labeling, it's an issue. I'm not sure if you knew, but Mexico just back in, I think it was 2019, they switched their labeling, um how they label things, how they reported all the calories, all the carbohydrates, and it
Yeah,
was a
I've seen.
huge issue. Yeah, so it was a huge issue. So I know that also that the whole labeling system is just right now, it's also a mess.
It's a mess. I
So
completely agree. I like there's, and I think it communicates. mm, Um, I don't think it does an effective way, or it doesn't effectively communicate what it's trying to communicate. I think
yeah,
there's a lot of products that will be labeled a certain way over certain things. There's a label for excess of sodium, right? So,
right,
for example, there'll be a lot of healthy alternatives that will say excess of sodium, and that people read that, be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't buy this. But
right,
actually, like that's actually healthy, and sodium is not necessarily bad for you. So sodium is
right,
electrolytes for you to stay hydrated. So there's a
right.
lot of things that like go into that specific campaign, for example, of labeling certain things,
Hmm.
where, like, I agree with you, it's not ideal. It's I think there could have been a way better way of implementing uh
Yep.
some sort of communication for the public. But yeah, that's not great.
Yeah, when that happened, I do remember a lot of food companies going nuts in Mexico. Like, well, basically we will have all this stamps on our products, and also, like, when you analyze it, since all the stamps that they put excess of sodium, or this is not meant for children, things like that, um um in terms of the grams that they're based on. I think, for example, that the gums also said like excess of calories, excess of these things, and it's like, well, obvious. I mean, it's, I don't know. At the end, it's just, I do believe that there was a different way to approach for in this case Mexican population to have a better to have a better nutrition. I think basically things hit the fan, and at the end the only way to control or to try to help people to balance their diet was changing into that labeling, telling them what's healthy and what's not healthy. But at the end, I do think that it wasn't the right approach. I do think that education is just the basic thing that should have been provided since the first place, and it's something that it's always has been overlooked by the government. So
I have a question. I'm not sure if you know, but I'm gonna ask because hopefully you do. Do you know if it had some sort of positive effect on like the perhaps like on obesity, like people like percentages in Mexico at all, or if it affected it some positive way? Do you know?
from what I've heard, and before I came here, it definitely didn't have any
Okay.
effect. It was really overlooked. I think initially it did have an effect on saying on people that are more knowledgeable in terms of the subject. But right now, I mean, since that was before the pandemic, I think after the pandemic, everyone was like, I'm gonna eat whatever I want. So I really don't care whatever label they has. So I don't think it has had a significant impact in terms of consumption. I really wouldn't believe so.
Yeah. Okay. I was curious. I don't know honestly. And maybe I'm out here talking trash about it, and then maybe it did
No,
happen. So okay.
no. I know that it definitely didn't have the impact that they were expecting. I know that the initiative was was started by the health, obviously the health section of the country, and there was another department that I just forgot. But basically the reason why everything started is because they had all these people coming into public hospitals with obesity or with high blood pressure, and they just saw this as a quick fix that at the end didn't actually address the problem. So
Yeah.
it actually caused a lot of problems because a lot of food companies, they had all this, it was all of a sudden, it was nothing that they were expecting. So they had all this product that they had to relabeled, and also a lot of product that was potentially discarded because they didn't have all those stamps. So
And it can create some sort of like a confusion in the public, or it can create some sort of I guess not necessarily misinformation, but just create a erroneous perception on the people as to what's healthy and what's unhealthy.
Right.
It's just that, yeah, like if it has a bunch of labels,
yeah,
maybe someone can be like, oh, like this has all the labels, it's definitely not healthy. But then
right,
you look at something that just has one label when it's way worse. But it's
right,
just there's a lot
right,
of components that go into it that are not being communicated in
exactly.
addition to the ones that are. So it would have to, yeah, like it comes down to education, like you said.
Yep.
Going forward, do you seem to be invested in this, I can tell, or it would seem like that. Do you want to just work in like the private sector of foods, such as like the companies that you mentioned, or like some companies that align with your values, or would you maybe in the future would want to work in some sort of government agency to try to implement plans that you find would be beneficial for a lot of people? Maybe in Mexico, maybe in the US, I don't know. But just would you like that? Is that something you'd look into?
I will definitely. I have thought about the possibility of working in the government, but honestly, since from all the things that I've seen back in our home country and here as well, I don't think it's something that it's meant for me, because I think that there's just so many, there's bigger things than us that we just can't control. It's just really hard for one person to make a change. So I think in my from my point of view, I would like to go into the either private sector or a small company that you can actually make an impact.
Okay.
And so, but there's also a lot of variables there that need to be considered, because you do need to see that in a small company, since it's a startup company, let's say, you will have a lot of work at first. I mean, since they tend to have so little amount of workers, you basically end up doing a lot of things, and you have to have a lot of resilience and patience for that. And when you compare it to really good huge companies, you tend to have just a specific role, but the impact is not that much. So that's something that hopefully I'll have figured out once I finish the program.
Yeah. When you say that some things are like out of your control in the government, for example, what do you mean? What are some of those things?
Let's say that you would try to, I don't know, let's say I would try to go back to Mexico and work for the COFEPRIS, which is the one that mainly regulates everything. I think that at the end, there's just, I mean, there's just so many things that you could do to make a change, but I just have a bad feeling that anything regarding the government is just really tricky to change, or they have a lot of biases towards different companies. So at the end, it's just really hard to make an impact or a change. So that's why I think, personally, for me, it wouldn't be an option. So
Mostly from like an economy perspective, they wouldn't want to necessarily change certain things.
yeah. So, and I know that's an issue.
And biases, like you said too. That makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of biases, including here. There was a lecture that I don't know what product we were debating on, that it was passed by the FDA, but I just don't remember what product. And it was biased towards the company. And I was just really astonished, because I was like, I grew up over there in Mexico looking up to the FDA. So at the end, it's just, there's a lot of biases. So yeah, I don't think it will be a really good fit for me.
Yeah, but I mean, you can like you said, you can definitely make an impact from a smaller company or a private industry, where you can then focus on something that you enjoy more and
Yeah.
try to reach out to the people kind of directly by
Yeah.
offering them a product that actually can benefit their life in some way, right? So I think that's very valid, and hopefully you're able to find what you're looking for.
Hopefully we will see. And something that it's important to know, that there's no perfect job, there's no perfect position, because I think something that we have in our minds, that yeah, I'm gonna find that perfect position. And after the experiences that I had, I think that's not, it's really basically impossible. So yeah, hopefully I can find something that that can at least be like fit into, I don't know, 70% or 60% of what I'm looking for, right? But hopefully that will happen in the future.
Yeah, and find a place that you feel happy to be there and
Yep.
work in, and look forward to um creating projects and participating in projects within that company, and just that you feel like contributing and you feel happy in there, like by
Yes.
being there, right? I think that's
Yes.
the biggest thing.
Yeah. As long as you are happy doing whatever you're doing, the position that you are doing, I think you are totally on the other side of the road. I think you're just basically living the best life that you can get, because that's just amazing. But hopefully that will happen later in the future. We will see. Who knows? So I'll pray that something like that will happen.
Yeah, no, you have to stay positive, and if you work hard, I'm sure as you find out, as you found out before, if you work hard, you get rewarded. So just keep working hard.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
That's what I keep in myself in mind.
Is there somewhere where people can maybe, if they're interested in learning about a little more about you, like is there anywhere like where you would want to put out or some profile or something?
Well, I have, let me see. I mean, I have my LinkedIn,
Okay.
where people can just go into, and I mean, I have just basics about me, where I've worked, the projects that I've been involved in. Let's see. Yeah, that's mainly what I use.
If you want, wait, it can be the LinkedIn. It doesn't have to be more things.
Yeah, let me think this is the one.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the one. I basically has all my information in terms of what I've been working on and what I've been focusing on, what I'm focusing right now. So
Yeah.
if
I will put it in the link to the description of the video. But
Awesome.
thank you for your time. I appreciate you coming on here. It was a great conversation.
No, thank you so much for reminding me. It's really it's an honor to be here. I've never been interviewed ever in my life, so it's cool. It's cool to have that opportunity. I really appreciate you and your time.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it.